In other news, South Africa police on Monday monitored protests by the country's leftist Economic Freedom Fighters Party, which is demanding the resignation of President Cyril Ramaphosa. The party urged all South Africans to participate in the national shutdown, but there was limited response in most of the country's major cities. EFF leader Julius Malema addressed a crowd of nearly 1,000 people in South Africa's capital, Pretoria, where he claimed the government tried to sabotage the planned national shutdown by preventing buses from transporting people to various marches. Police say that at least 87 people were arrested for public violence and related offenses by Monday. Several roads leading to the center of Johannesburg's eastern suburb of Kempton Park were closed as protesters marched to voice their grievances. The protest was meant to highlight South Africa's power cuts, which have seen households and businesses go without electricity for up to 12 hours daily.
Doing everything to make sure that we stay on the message. What is the message? Load shedding. What is the message? Ramaphosa must go. What is the message? High unemployment. What is the message? GPV. What is the message? High levels of crime in South Africa. What is the message? The poverty levels have increased in South Africa. That message they can't shift on. We are tired of this nonsense. Close all of this because the whole world must know there is shenanigans going on in this country. Our people stay in the shacks. Our people don't have water. Our people don't have electricity. 30 years into democracy.
Well, our Rice correspondent, Mxolisi Masango, joins us now to bring us up to speed with development in South Africa and what the situation is likely to culminate into. Thanks so much for joining us on Newsday. I'm going to get straight into it. Now, the Secretary General of the ANC, Fikile Mbalula, has labeled the national shutdown a flop. Now, it's clear, of course, nobody expected that this protest would lead to President Ramaphosa stepping down. But I'm wondering, from the ground, what are the metrics that would gauge whether or not this was a successful outing? Because it looks pretty impressive and massive from the video coverage.
Well, first, I think we'd have to gauge how united were the parties on the ground to begin with. I mean, we've seen people beyond the party lines unite for this particular march. I know I saw just leading the charge yesterday as they were heading to the union buildings. This is where essentially the engine of the country is situated at the union buildings. We saw Julius Malema of the EFF alongside other party leaders, such as members of the ATM, as well as other parties as well. So, so many mixed reactions coming across as to whether or not this particular march was successful. But I can tell you right now, we've seen some major roads that were blockaded yesterday in the country. But of course, on the other hand, you have people who just continued to go about their day and said that they would not really be deterred by this march, seeing that there's so much that has happened. And once again, also, some South Africans weighed in on this to say that as much as they don't support maybe a political march, what they would be calling a political march, but the cause itself spoke to some of the issues that are closest to the hearts of South Africans. I mean, we're looking at the power crisis now in the country. He spoke about water, Malema, in that speech. He spoke about water where some communities don't even have water. And mind you, today is the 21st of March, which is recognized as Human Rights Day in South Africa. And when you still have some of those communities struggling with the bare minimals, such as your clean running water services, such as, a sufficient power supply, as we've seen over the past few years with load shedding coming into the fort in the country. So those were some of the pleas that were made yesterday with that march. And we've seen throughout the country, although they were just isolated in pockets of criminal and violent elements, this march really resounded with what most South Africans feel right now, where they feel there's a leadership deficit in the country that really needs to take account of what is happening before this country turns into something else.
Thank you, Mxolisi. Now, analysts expect the ANC to lose its parliamentary majority for the first time in 3 decades in national elections next year. Is that a possibility?
It's a likelihood, I can tell you right now. And this is also at a time where most of these political parties are pulling out all the stops to ensure that, their draw card for this upcoming election, speaks to the aspirations of most South Africans. One would also assume that they will try, and ride on the shortcomings of the ruling party. Has the ruling party been able to sort out the power crisis with Eskom right now, where we see most parastatals in shambles? No, they haven't managed to do that. Have they managed to sort out the unemployment rate in the country, where most of the youth in the country, or most people in the country, more than 67% of people in the country are unemployed? Have they managed to sort that out? No, they haven't. So most of these parties, as they begin with their manifesto, essentially a manifesto is a point where, these parties will make themselves known, introduce themselves to the masses, as well as tell the masses what they can do for them. So one thing is for sure is that the upcoming 2024 general elections are going to be quite a bruising contest for the ANC. This is also at a time where we've seen most of these opposing parties trying to capitalize on the shortcomings of the ANC by, convening meetings where they sit down and talk about the possibility of coalition governments, because the indication right now, as far as statistics are concerned, as far as analysts are concerned, it seems like South Africans are tired and they will be voicing out their frustrations in the polls. And it seems like the ruling party, the ANC, which resonated with the likes of the late, great Utata Mandela, might not be in power after that, and which would then mean we'd be seeing a whole lot of these coalition governments, which would mean that there would not be one outright party that governs the country, but joint parties that will govern the country, which will really be interesting to watch.
Absolutely. Now, still in line with alliances or support for the ANC, especially because today is Human Rights Day, I've seen the release from the ruling party, and there's always a sentiment of reminding people how far we have come and how far the ANC has brought South Africans out of, which of course the entire world is grateful for. But when you're on the ground in South Africa, is there a sense that people are losing that emotional attachment that they had to the ANC as their liberator and their revolutionary party? Is that that sort of pull of emotion an expired strategy to use to try and win over South African, especially black voters?
I'm actually chuckling as you're asking me this question. Part why, I'll tell you why. It's because, just before the local government elections last year, we saw how even most youth, which we refer to Generation X here in the country, would come out to say that this is a party that resonated with the likes of great legends who really, played a very important role in the struggle of the country. But right now, it's a shadow of its former self right now. This is a party that is riddled with corruption. This is a party that is riddled with scandals. And you heard how most young people were even saying that we are willing to even hide the identity documents of our grandmothers and grandfathers, because they are the ones who always say they feel this is a liberation movement that brought the country out of the trenches of apartheid. So when you hear Generation X come out and say that they would even go as far as hiding the identity documents of their grandfathers and grandmothers. Why? So they don't get to vote for the ANC. It really does speak to a greater problem to say that you have a wave of young people that is more enlightened, a wave and a generation of South Africans who are saying enough is enough with the corruption that we're seeing in the country. Enough is enough with the, a sense of rewarding corruption and rewarding incompetence in government, with most people saying it's time for, a government that will really speak to the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of most South Africans. So once again, the upcoming election for next year will remain, a telling as far as the South African history, as well as the greater political context of the country is concerned.
Thank you, Mxolisi. We do understand that the state electricity utility, that's Eskom, is implementing the worst rolling blackouts on record, leaving households in the dark for, up to 10 hours. In some cases, we hear 12 hours. But have they offered any reasonable explanation as to why this has gone on for so long?
Look, we all know why, and this was just the tip of the iceberg. We were just bound to get to where we are right now as a country. We've seen throughout the leadership tenure of President Jacob Zuma how parastatals like Eskom itself, were what you'd call a ticking time bomb as far as management was concerned, or lack thereof was concerned. So we've seen how this revolving door effect as well of them having CEOs and COOs as well as other people in executive positions within Eskom come and go within the parastatal. It speaks to the exact state of affairs of that parastatal, that there is absolutely no stability within Eskom at this particular point in time. So right now, the first priority for government would be try and bring some sort of stability. This is also at a time where we've seen Andre Dure, who is the former chief executive of the parastatal, effectively, just dismissed from his position. This is also at a time where now they're looking for his successor. Eskom itself does not have a chief executive, as we have in this conversation. And rolling blackouts, which were suspended yesterday, have been brought back. We're seeing schedules of power cuts and power outages in the country come back again with a lesser stage of stage 2 rolling blackouts here in the country. So one would assume that in order for government to try and at least be in the right direction towards getting it right, they would really have to clean up the parastatal as far as management is concerned and as far as those people who occupy those managerial positions are concerned, but also just to make sure that they have the competent people with the experience and know-how to be in those positions. That's the only way South Africa might at least be rescued from this crippling power crisis that has seen so many businesses and so many households, come out and say that they're feeling the pinch now, especially in the pockets.
Right, and I know some people would say that the EFF has been successful because you've had stable electricity since the national shutdown was implemented. But Arise correspondent Mxolisi Masango, thank you so much for your time today and for your analysis.